The sound of my heels echoed sharply against the marble floor of the apartment lobby, a hollow rhythm in the emptiness of another late Tuesday night. 14 hours of work behind me, another achievement locked under my belt, yet the triumph already felt like dust in my hands. I had dazzled the clients at Belmont and Company, secured their loyalty for another year, and left the boardroom with applause in my wake. But as the elevator doors slid open, I glanced at my phone. Nothing. No messages, no calls. The mirrored walls of the elevator stared back, reflecting a woman who looked older than 31. Emilia Carter, Senior Public Relations Director, weary lines hiding beneath her carefully applied makeup. Her smile, if it could be called that, was more performance than feeling. Tonight was her birthday. When I stepped into my apartment, silence rushed to greet me. On the coffee table sat the small cake I'd bought myself that morning, its single candle waiting like a forgotten soldier on an empty battlefield. I placed my bag down, staring at it. A laugh escaped my lips, bitter and brittle. "Happy birthday, Emilia," I whispered to the walls. I sank into the couch, heels abandoned carelessly on the floor, and stared at the cake as though it had betrayed me. The room was perfectly decorated, the warm tones of the lamps softening the edges of the apartment, yet the space felt hollow, like it rejected me tonight. The ticking of the wall clock grew louder with every passing second, carrying me closer to midnight, closer to the end of a birthday no one had remembered. My fingers drifted toward my laptop, a familiar refuge. I told myself I'd review that proposal again, lose myself in numbers and strategies until the day ended. But temptation tugged me elsewhere. Almost against my will, I opened social media. The first post that appeared stopped my breath cold. My brother, Daniel, stood with a champagne glass raised high, surrounded by family and friends, his grin stretching wide beneath a banner that read "Congratulations on your promotion." There they were. My parents, my cousins, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, gathered around him. My father's arm rested proudly across Daniel's shoulders. My mother's eyes sparkled with joy. The photos were stamped 4 hours ago. On my birthday. I scrolled down, each new photo cutting deeper like reopening wounds I thought had healed. Toasts were made, gifts unwrapped, laughter spilling across the frames. The captions blurred as I blinked through the sting in my eyes. "So proud of our rising star," my father had written. "Carrying the Carter legacy forward," my mother had added. My chest tightened. They hadn't forgotten my birthday. They had chosen to ignore it. Memories surged, uninvited and sharp. My 11th birthday, sitting alone in a restaurant booth, the wax of a single candle dripping down my cake, while my family cheered Daniel at his debate finals. 17 years old, sent to spend the weekend with grandma while mom and dad toured Ivy League campuses with him. My college graduation, where my honors were eclipsed in seconds by Daniel's engagement announcement. I remembered the way the conversation shifted, the way my father raised his glass to wedding venues and future plans while my achievements dissolved in the background. And just last month, Dad dismissing the campaign I had led that boosted client revenue by nearly 40%. "It's just advertising," he said, checking his watch. "Not like Daniel's work in finance. That's real impact." My phone remained silent on the coffee table, its blank screen mocking me. I scrolled through my contacts, names blurring together, people who only reached out when they needed something. None of them called to ask how I was doing, what battles I'd fought to get here. A soft chime pulled me back. An email. I opened it without thought and froze. My performance bonus had arrived. $79,000. The number glowed on the screen, unreal, like a secret doorway opening. My phone rang then, and for one fragile moment, hope flared. I answered too quickly. "Emilia, darling," her voice chimed, light and hurried. "I'm glad I caught you. We're planning something for Daniel and Laura's anniversary next month, and I thought you could help with catering, maybe decorations. You're so talented at that." I glanced at the clock. Midnight. My birthday had officially ended. My throat tightened as I whispered, "Mom, today was my birthday." Silence, then a startled laugh. "Oh, sweetheart, with Daniel's big promotion it just slipped our minds. You know how it is." Slipped. Forgotten. I stared at the glowing email still open on my laptop. $79,000. More money than I had ever seen in one place. Something shifted inside me, subtle but seismic, like the ground beneath me rearranging itself. Don't worry about it, Mom, I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. I understand what matters most to this family. 4 days later at work, that understanding hardened. An accidental invitation from my mother had revealed the family's group chat. My name littered the thread. Dad had suggested I contribute at least $20,000 toward Daniel's anniversary gift. Mom replied she just got that bonus. It's time she supports the family for once. For once. And there it was. My name misspelled with one L instead of two. My own mother couldn't even spell it right. I leaned back in my chair, leather creaking beneath me, and stared out at the skyline beyond my office window. The glittering city didn't know how invisible I felt in my own family. Jennifer, my colleague and closest friend, poked her head in. You okay? You look like you saw a ghost. Worse, I murmured. I saw the truth. The next afternoon, my office door clicked open and Jennifer slipped in, curls bouncing, eyes already scanning my face. Your brother pinged me, she said. He's asking for an intro to Viridian Systems CMO. Says it's urgent. A notification flared across my screen before I could answer. Another email from leadership. Northwind Outdoors quarterly metrics. Plus 44% revenue lift following your campaign. The praise was effusive, precise, undeniable. Then a shadow filled my doorway. Emilia. Gareth Lynn, our CEO, set a folder on my desk. You over-delivered, he said, tapping the numbers. This is why I pushed for your bonus. You earned every cent. His smile actually reached his eyes. Take a breath. Celebrate. As he left, my phone vibrated again. Daniel. I let it ring until the call slid into voicemail. When I finally picked up, my voice came out even. What do you need? Family helping family, he said, breezy. We have a dinner with a potential investor. I need Viridian's CMO there. Tomorrow. Not a question. An expectation. I'll see what I can do, I replied, non-committal. When I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the window. A woman who fixed other people's emergencies while her own heart sat unacknowledged on a coffee table beside a candle no one lit. That evening I took the stairs to the third floor and knocked on 3B. The door opened to cinnamon and warmth. Right on time, said Mrs. Whitaker, 84 and unstoppable, thrusting a plate of lemon bars into my hands. We ate at her tiny kitchen table with the checkered cloth like always. I told her about the group chat, the misspelled name, the request for 20,000. I hated how small my voice sounded at the end, like I was 10 again, asking permission to breathe. She listened the way few people know how, without interrupting, without fixing. When I finished, she covered my fingers with her paper-thin hand. Some parents install mirrors where windows should be, she said softly. They look and only see themselves. It isn't your job to be their reflection. On my way home, her words followed me down the quiet hall. I stood at my door, key paused in the lock, hearing the echo of my heels from earlier as if time were looping. In my living room, the cake still waited on the table like a question I hadn't answered. When my phone lit up with Daniel's name again, I turned its screen down and let the apartment fill with the radical sound of silence. Saturday arrived wrapped in the perfumed ritual of my parents' house. Ravenshade Lane, all carved stone and spotless glass. Inside, fresh flowers fussed under my mother's attention while my father measured ice cubes into a glass like they owed him interest. Daniel and his wife Laura looked catalog perfect on the leather sofa. Dinner followed the old choreography. Dad narrating Daniel's promotion with a general's precision, Mom threading in gleaming anecdotes. I moved salmon around my plate, waiting. It came with dessert as scripted. We should discuss your contribution, Dad said, setting his cup down with the weight of a verdict. 20,000 covers venue and catering. Given your recent windfall, it's appropriate. Mom nodded, pearl earrings catching the light. Family supports family, darling. The word struck bone. When had they supported me? I can't, I said. Quietly, clearly. Dad frowned like the concept didn't parse. I beg your pardon? I won't contribute 20,000. My voice steadied. That's a quarter of my bonus. I have other plans. Silence descended, unfamiliar and heavy. I watched it land on their faces, confusion curdling into offense. What could possibly take precedence over your brother's celebration? Dad asked, tone dropping like a trapdoor. High future, I answered. Mom's eyes shimmered on command. After all we've done for you, she whispered, the old performance lifting like a curtain. What exactly have you done for me? The question slipped out before I could tame it. Daniel went still. Dad's jaw twitched. I won't tolerate ingratitude in this house, my father said, rising to his full 6'2", authority draped across him like a robe. Your brother carries the Carter legacy. The least you can do is finance it. I stood, legs unsure, voice not. No. I gathered my bag. Mom reached for my arm. Emilia, don't make a scene. For decades I'd been the family seamstress, stitching quarrels closed, hemming resentments shorter, disguising rips with careful pleats. Tonight the needle fell from my hand. I walked out. The door closed behind me with a soft, astonishing sound. In the car, my hands shook on the wheel until the tremor steadied into something quieter, stronger. A promise formed in the dark space between breaths. This is the start. Not the end. When my phone lit with Mom's name, I let it ring out. The road ahead unfurled like a long ribbon of possibility, glinting under streetlights. I followed it home, not to be safe but to be free. The next week my mother called every morning at 7:15 precisely. I learned to leave my phone in the bathroom while the kettle sang. This rebellious phase of yours, her voice echoed through tile and steam, it needs to end. Your father hasn't slept. I'm not rebellious, I said, brushing mascara onto lashes that had weathered worse. I'm 31. After everything we've sacrificed. What did you sacrifice, Mom? A stunned inhale. How can you ask that? By afternoon, the glass doors at Belmont and Company parted for my father's silhouette. Heads turned. Jennifer mouthed code red. Dad, I said, intercepting him. This is my workplace. Then behave like a professional, his voice carried, drawing eyes from the bullpen. Professionals honor family obligations. I guided him into an empty conference room. What do you want? Your mother is in tears. Is that what you intended? Over one missed birthday. Molten heat surged in my chest. Try 20 years of birthdays, graduations, milestones. You exaggerate, he sighed. Daniel deserves support. 20,000 is fair. My phone buzzed. Client crisis, top account. I stood. I need to handle this. This conversation isn't finished, Emilia. It is for me. 3 hours later, I presented a crisis strategy that kept a $3 million account. Applause. Relief. Pride. My hands steady. That night, alone in a corner cafe, I watched a group of friends crown a woman with a paper tiara. Make a wish, Maya, someone laughed as candles flickered. The ease between them stung. I stared at my half-eaten slice of carrot cake and opened my laptop. My fingers moved before permission caught up. Lakefront property upstate. Listings bloomed, glass and cedar, porches mouth-kissing the water's edge, rooms where sunlight pooled on hardwood like spilled honey. One stopped me. For bedrooms, wraparound deck, tall pines keeping secrets. $352,000. I clicked through every photo twice. With each image, something loosened, like a tight dress unzipped, a breath reaching the bottom of my lungs. The next morning I called the realtor. By Thursday I stood on that deck, the lake flaring silver-white beneath a sky that didn't care about the Carter family calendar. The owners have already relocated, the realtor chirped. They're eager. I'll take it, I heard myself say. I can put down a substantial payment. Don't you want to think or perhaps bring family to see? No, the word cut clean and bright. This one is for me. By the time I drove back to Harbor City, the shape of my life had shifted, quietly, irrevocably, like a new shoreline drawn overnight. Approval came fast, credit excellent, numbers crisp. I signed in a quiet office that smelled faintly of ink and lemons. Each flourish of my pen felt like carving my name into bedrock. Mrs. Whitaker insisted on coming to the closing. She squeezed my hand when the keys slid across the desk. A woman's sanctuary is not a luxury, she said. It's a right. Weekends became a hymn. I drove north with a trunk full of paint chips and courage. I learned the particular music of the house, the sigh of the old fireplace, the lake's soft percussion against the shore, the whisper of pines trading secrets at night. I hung proof of my life on the walls. A photo of my team cheering after we saved Northwind, the magazine cover that featured my campaign, my own graduation portrait, centered and unshadowed. The master bedroom took my breath once I claimed it. I set a reading chair by the window, stacked a tower of books I'd promised I'd get to someday, and found linen that felt like sleeping inside a cloud. On the door I hung a small wooden sign I carved myself. Birthday suite. When I typed out housewarming invitations, my finger hovered over family. Then gently I pressed delete and hit send only to those who had shown up for me. On a bright Sunday, bare feet on new cedar, I lifted a glass of Pinot and took a photo. Nothing staged, just a woman on a deck she chose. The caption was simple. Weekend at my new lake house. Birthday present to myself. I posted it before I could overthink. The air smelled like pine and possibility. I left my phone face down on the railing and tipped my head back to watch geese cross the blue. For 20 minutes the world was only water, wind, and the rush of being wholly mine. When I finally checked the screen, numbers crowded the top. Missed calls, messages stacked like bricks. 17 missed calls. 32 texts. 8 from mom alone in 15 minutes. I silenced the ringer and slid the phone into my pocket, the act small and revolutionary. I settled deeper into the Adirondack chair I'd assembled myself, palms against the warm wood, watching the sun slip from gold to rose to ember. The house loomed behind me, a place too large by some measurements but exactly my size by the ones that mattered. Jennifer commented beneath the photo, "You deserve this and more. Can't wait to come up." Me too, I typed and meant it. Monday brought voicemails that lunged and snapped. "Where did you get the money? This is irresponsible. People are asking questions. There will be a family meeting. Be there." I deleted them and made blueberry pancakes in my new kitchen, humming to the soft sizzle of batter meeting butter. By afternoon, I'd hung gauzy curtains that made the master glow like dawn all day and assembled patio furniture that begged for conversations late into the night. My work phone rang. Jennifer's voice came low and brisk. "Your brother just stormed the office. I told him you'd taken the week off. He asked where. I said that wasn't mine to share." "Thank you." The relief must have been obvious. "Don't thank me yet." He cornered Devon in accounting, caught a whiff of upstate. "Heads up." I looked out at the lake as a breeze lifted the edges of the water like turning pages. "Let them find me," I said, surprising us both. When Saturday came, so did my people. Cars in the gravel. Laughter spilling over the deck. Arms full of flowers and groceries and love that didn't ask for proof. For the first time in years, I let myself be celebrated without rationing joy as if it might run out. The housewarming unfolded like a story I didn't realize I'd been writing. Charcoaled corn and steaks on the grill, a silver lake trading sunlight for stars, music drifting between conversations. Gareth arrived with a bottle of Cabernet and a card that read, "To celebrating the person behind the results." I pinned the note on the kitchen board like a medal. Mrs. Whitaker came last, carrying a quilt stitched from blues and greens that mirrored the lake. "Every good home needs something made by love," she said, laying it across my arms. My throat tightened. I'd been starved for small, tender things. Now here they were, warm and heavy and mine. We took photos. Friends sprawled on the new sofa, Jennifer laughing so hard she covered her face, Mrs. Whitaker teaching us the proper way to fold napkins into lilies. I posted a few. Not to provoke anyone, though I knew it would, but to honor the truth of the day. By sunset my father texted from an unknown angle of fury. "Where did you get house money? Answer immediately." I poured another glass of wine and did not. The lake went indigo. Crickets tuned their violins. I folded the quilt over the back of a chair and felt, for a breathless moment, entirely safe. When I returned to the city, the family rumor mill had already churned butter from smoke. Cousin Elise called from a hushed corridor. "Everyone is talking," she confided, voice sugared with concern. "Aunt Helena is beside herself. Uncle Victor tried to convene a meeting, but you were unavailable." "I was hanging shelves," I said, strangely calm. "People are saying things." Pause sharpened. "That you've hidden money. That you're having an episode. That this is jealousy." I laughed, quick and real. "That sounds exactly like our family." The call that mattered came Thursday night. I answered on the fourth ring and sat on my porch swing, letting it rock. "This has gone far enough," my mother said, crisp as a starched napkin. "The Petersons, the Carsons, even Reverend Hill, are asking about your situation." "My situation," I repeated, watching a heron blade across the water. "Buying a house as a stunt. Posting photos to embarrass us. Or to celebrate myself," I said. We're hosting a dinner Sunday, she pressed on. We'll explain it was a misunderstanding. That we've always supported you. The old Emilia would have scrambled to smooth her voice into yes. I'm available Tuesday at 7, I said. And I'll bring the photo albums. What albums? The ones that remember what everyone else forgot. Tuesday arrived dressed like a verdict. I climbed the granite steps of Ravenshade with 3 heavy albums clutched against my ribs and rang the bell instead of using my key. Dad opened the door, eyes flicking to the books then back to the clock above my head. You're late, he said, already turning. The dining room glittered with good china and candlelight. A performance scrubbed of fingerprints. I placed the albums on the sideboard and took my usual chair opposite Daniel, diagonal from the throne where Dad presided. Your mother made your favorite, Dad said, serving himself first as always. Beef Wellington. It hadn't been my favorite since high school, but it had always been Daniel's. Let's skip the theater, I said, my plate pristine. You called this dinner to tell me to sell the lake house, to scold me for making you uncomfortable, to reframe my life as your public relations crisis. Dad's knife sawed through pastry with surgical disdain. It reflects poorly on the family. Reckless spending. Poor planning. It was my bonus. Money that could have been invested properly. Or contributed to something meaningful. Daniel cleared his throat, eyes skittering. No one's saying you can't have nice things, Em. But selling might keep the peace. Peace for whom? I asked. Peace for whom? I asked. I rose and carried the first album to the center of the table. Let's review the record, I said, opening to a page where 6-year-old Daniel grinned under a paper crown. The pages flipped like a deck. 8, 10, 17, banners, towers of gifts, a car with a giant bow at 18. Professional photos. Mom's mascara honestly smudged with joy. I slid the second album forward. Wine. Mom reached first. Blank pages blinked up, then a scattering. Me alone with store cupcakes. A snapshot of Mrs. Whitaker hugging me at 30. Nothing else. On my 21st, you were at Daniel's engagement party, I said, gentle as a scalpel. Daniel flinched. I opened the third album. Family vacations. Disney, canyons, cathedrals. I'm not in these, I said. As I wasn't there. Grandma's. Not enough for everyone. Dad stood, chair feet scraping wood. What is the point of this melodrama? You have always been the difficult one. The point is evidence. I set down a printed spreadsheet. Tuition, gifts, vehicles, trips. Columns didn't lie. Thousands funneling one way, drips the other. Then a diary page frayed. I read. Maybe next year they'll remember without Grandma calling. Age 9. Finally, a photo. Christmas 3 years ago. You set a place for me, I said. But that's the guest chair. Silence tensed the air until it hummed. Dad's face darkened. What do you want? An apology? Fine. We favored Daniel. He bears the name forward. The admission landed like thunder after a long, dry season. Mom's eyes filled for real this time. We didn't mean to, she whispered. It became habit. And you were self-sufficient. Easy to ignore, I finished for her. Daniel said nothing. His gaze was fixed on a photo I'd placed at the edge. Him at 8, drowning in presents. Me at 6, a smile stuck flat to my face like a label. I gathered the loose papers, leaving the albums on the table. I'm not here to be convinced of my own story, I said. I don't need your validation or your money or your approval. I waited 31 years for you to see me. I won't wait 32. I walked to the door. Behind me, Mom hiccuped a sob. Dad didn't move. Daniel's voice caught on my name, then let it go. The albums are yours, I said, hand on the knob. Keep the evidence. Decide what to do with it. The latch clicked. Outside, the night felt wider than any room I'd ever been allowed to occupy. I found my breath and followed it home. A year later, the lake woke bright and forgiving. I set out a tray of strawberries and a bucket cradling champagne in a collar of ice. 32 candles waited on a cake Jennifer insisted needed one extra for luck. Need a hand. Mark from marketing balanced pastries in the doorway. Anywhere, I smiled, smoothing my red sundress. My phone buzzed with messages about my promotion. Senior director, announced yesterday like the universe had finally learned my timing. Dr. Levine would call it integration. The woman who soothed everyone else while starving herself had learned to feed both. Boundaries had grown muscles. Thanksgiving at a spa in Vermont. Muting group texts when they curdled. Building traditions from raw wood and intention. Jennifer clinked a mimosa. To the birthday girl who taught us to choose ourselves. Glasses sang. Laughter rippled. Out on the road, a car door thudded. I knew the engine's timbre before I saw the glossy hood. Daniel stepped onto the deck with a box under his arm. Conversations softened to a curious hush. He looked older in the way that matters. Edges dulled, eyes unarmed. "Sorry to crash," he said. "I wanted to give you this. I surprised us both. They eat cake." Later, the house hummed with warm disorder. Plates stacked, candle wax puddling, someone's scarf draped like a flag of friendship over a chair. Daniel and I walked to the dock and let our feet dangle above the lake's black glass. The package sat between us, still wrapped. "Therapy's been a corrective," he said, words searching for footing. "Dad refuses. Mom's trying. I didn't see it until you showed me." He swallowed. "How they made me the sun and you the shadow." I nudged the box toward me and peeled the paper back. Inside lay a framed photograph I didn't know existed. Me at 7 on our old tire swing, hair flying, laughing at something beyond the frame. No one else in the shot. Just me, unrequired by anyone's story. "Found it in Dad's storage," he said. "Had it restored. Proof you were there even when the camera kept choosing me." My throat tightened. Not absolution. Not repair. But a hinge. "You can come up here," I said, voice thin with something I recognized as hope. "Not as the family's envoy. As my brother." He nodded, looking relieved, like I'd handed him permission to be smaller than the role he'd been stuffed into. We sat until the cold stitched our ankles and the stars learned our names. A soft knock returned me to the lights and chatter. Through the glass, my mother stood, a small bakery box clutched in both hands like she didn't trust gravity. Daniel exhaled. She insisted. I didn't tell her until today. I opened the door. Mom's smile wobbled, then surrendered. "Happy birthday, Emilia," she whispered, offering the box. Inside, a single carrot cupcake with a candle. "You always liked this." "I did," I said, surprised she remembered. "We're winding down, but stay. Have cake." Relief surged through her posture, then cracked with something like grief. "I'm trying," she said, more to the floor than to me. "It's hard to see clearly after so long." "Small steps," I said and meant it. We didn't excavate history in the kitchen. We cut the cupcake 3 ways, past plates, and let the frosting blur clean edges. She left early, awkward and earnest. I didn't promise anything I couldn't keep. After the last guest hugged me, I carried the framed child on the tire swing to the bedroom and set her on the dresser. She studied me like a future she was beginning to trust. Outside, the lake caught the last orange of the sky and held it gently, like an apology offered without words. In the quiet week that followed, I wrote an email to my parents. Not a manifesto, 4 paragraphs, clear as a contract. I would not attend events where my worth was negotiated. I would not discuss my finances. I would meet for coffee, not interrogations. If they wanted a relationship with me, they'd build it with me, not around Daniel. Mom replied within an hour, grammar tidy, emotion peeking through the seams. She accepted the boundaries, then asked about the lake's weather like a person learning a new language. Dad didn't respond. On Tuesday, I drove Mrs. Whitaker up to the house. She moved through the rooms with proprietary delight, hands grazing door frames as if blessing them. We ate grilled cheese on the deck and she fell asleep for a moment in the reading chair, sunlight folding over her like another quilt. Later, I placed Daniel's photo on a nail above the dresser and watched the room realign around that small proof. The house felt different with her there, anchored not by absence but by presence. When my phone buzzed with a new family thread, Carter reunion planning, I muted it. That night I dreamt of windows, not mirrors. Things you look through when you're ready to see the world as it is. Autumn burned down to embers before a letter arrived, my name written in my father's precise, engineer's hand. I read it on the dock, sweater sleeves pulled over my palms. He didn't apologize, not exactly. He enumerated career, legacy, fear of failing the family name, as if itemizing a balance sheet might count for contrition. At the bottom, like a footnote, "Coffee? Your terms." We met at a sunlit cafe where no one cared about the Carter crest. He looked Smaller, like someone had let the air out of an argument. He didn't defend the albums. He didn't mention money. I thought strength meant never adjusting the frame, he said, stirring a black coffee into a storm. I see now it meant I never saw you. I held the heat of my mug and didn't rush in with bomb. Seeing is a verb, I said. It needs practice. He nodded, a fractional bow. We didn't hug. We didn't rewrite history over croissants. But when we left, he waited for my Uber and waved, not as a patriarch claiming property, but as a man saying goodbye to his adult daughter outside a cafe where the world kept going. I got in the car and let softness, cautious and unspectacular, settle in my ribs. At dawn, mist stitched the lake into its own private story. I carried a blanket to the deck and sat cross-legged with tea steaming in my hands. Inside, the house kept echoes of last week's laughter, of boundary lines drawn in pencil then ink, of a 7-year-old on a tire swing who had waited a very long time to be framed. A year ago I measured love by how loudly I performed for it. Today love looked like blueberry pancakes for one without apology. Like deleting threads that demanded I shrink. Like telling my reflection, you are not their myth. The world was quiet enough to ask a question I'd been too busy to hear. What will you give yourself next? Not a house. Not a job title. Something you can't photograph. Maybe it's permission to stop earning your right to breathe. Maybe it's the audacity to be thrilled by your own company. Maybe it's the choice to walk away without rehearsing 3 versions of an apology. Sun broke through the pines, flaring the surface gold. I raised my mug to the woman I was still becoming. If curiosity is the wick and courage the match, then this morning, this breath, is the flame. And you? In the quiet between who you were and who you're becoming, what will you choose?